Hello and welcome back to J. Kerner for Astrology. We're here to talk about Mercury Retrograde through Taurus from April 21st to May 14th.
Just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who's been liking, commenting, and subscribing. I'm really enjoying reading your comments. I love the community we're building. We blew past that 100 subscriber milestone. Let's see if we can get to 300. How quickly can we get to 300 subscribers? Thank you so much. Here are some of the major dates and transits. Go ahead and pause and take a screenshot here. And the major themes, what we'll be reflecting and focusing on for this Mercury retrograde period.
By reviewing what a Mercury retrograde is. A Mercury retrograde is an optical illusion. Mercury orbits the Sun faster than the Earth does in their respective elliptical orbits. Only appears to be stationing or stopping, standing still before spinning backward. This, however, still significant in its symbolism. Ancient astrology evolved from what humans were able to observe of the planets and their positions to one another from the naked eye. Mercury retrogrades are often dreaded because they come with mishaps, miscommunications, and missteps. But most importantly, opportunities for reflection. Opportunity to go back and make amends for a past mistake. Since Mercury rules over Gemini and Virgo, Mercury retrograde tends to affect Mercury life areas. Those include information, communication in all of its forms, writing, speaking, reading, emailing, texting, posting, along with contracts and agreements, leases, etc. Also rules the media, transportation, mail, shipping, and transportation including auto, trains, planes. In Mercury retrograde, you can expect delays, miscommunications, and mishaps, especially in those areas. But Mercury retrograde happens 3 times a year, and for each time that it retrogrades, it happens for about a month. This is relatively regular and not something that anyone should be afraid of, more of something that we can mark on our calendars, look out for, and learn how to work with.
Here are those dates. Go ahead and pause, take a screenshot, mark your calendars in your own time, and let's go.
Mercury rules our conscious, logical minds, and Mercury will be in Taurus. The zodiacal sign a planet is in speaks to how the energy will play out. Where that falls in your chart speaks to how it will specifically manifest for you on a personal level, which is why you would need a chart reading to make any type of prediction. So because Mercury rules communication, Mercury retrograde tends to come with the following patterns: mishaps and delays, reflection, return, rework, revisit, rethink, lots of R words, lots of going back, especially involving making amends. You may have encounters with blasts from the past, run-ins with old friends, maybe things that didn't end so well. I recently had an opportunity where I ran into an old friend where things didn't end particularly well, and we both had an opportunity to show that the more evolved version of ourselves is who we choose to be, and who, more importantly, is who exists now. So you may have similar opportunities, and these are opportunities. Remember that people too are just as capable of changing and evolving as you are, and maybe you're not particularly adaptable, but maybe you know someone who is. Everyone has the capacity to change with their own willpower. We have to trust that the person who harmed us 3 years ago or 4 years ago or however long it may be, that person doesn't exist anymore. So why hold on to the pains of resentment and anger to a version of a person that's literally a ghost? That person likely and hopefully, and we can only believe that they've evolved, and when put in a similar situation in the future, they would choose differently. You have to free yourself. So since our conscious minds will be focused on the energy of Taurus, let's review a little bit of what that means. Taurus is a fixed earth sign that's ruled by Venus. It incarnated to be self-sufficient and resourceful, and to provide resources for not only itself, but for its legacy. This is why a lot of Taurians and a lot of people with earth energy tend to be a little bit on the materialistic side, because their hard work pays off in something tangible and material in the 3D. And there's no judgment there. There's nothing wrong with that. They have worked hard and now they're reaping the rewards of that. Taurus energy has a lot to do with values and what we value. It has to do with Venus. Venus involves what we love and value, and it can even include clues to the work we do to fill our own cups, which not only provides us resources and money, things Taurus rules, but self-confidence, self-esteem, and value. Taurus energy is Venus ruled, which is representative of what astrology refers to as divine feminine energy, which all we mean is yin, or receptive, attracting, versus attract, which would be yang or masculine, attracting energy. Since it's Venus ruled, the energy of Venus bestows gifts in the arts, an eye for beauty and aesthetics, a focus on abundance and creating abundance. That's directly tied to their overall sense of resourcefulness, tied to their sense of self-worth and self-esteem. They're focused on creating peace, beauty, and harmony. Mercury in Taurus specifically is focused on soul and depth, work that brings meaning and higher purpose, building things of lasting value from a strong and stable foundation, quality over quantity, and releasing limiting thought patterns that ultimately block our ability to attract and receive abundance. Mercury's been in Taurus since the beginning of April 3rd, so you might have already been feeling this shift from this dominant yang, masculine Aries energy into the more subtle, feminine, receptive yin energy. This shift is increasing in intensity, considering we also have Mars, the planet that rules over Aries energy, in Cancer, answering to the moon, another yin, receptive, feminine energy, diluting some of that masculine yang, chase, hustle, culture energy. Mercury is a very fast-moving planet. It always stays within one zodiacal sign of the sun. Taurus is a fixed earth energy, which is grounded, practical, pragmatic, and stable. And what I've found, so I have a lot of mercurial energy, I have a lot of Gemini, my moon and Mars, and I have some key people in my life who have strong fixed energy, especially Taurus energy or Scorpio, where the effect is very grounding on my mercurial, which is all up in its head and up in the air. It needs something practical and tangible to help bring it down to earth and help ground it. And I think that opposition is very helpful. Next of this Mercury retrograde, while retrogrades are strong, this one won't be as severe. Off the hook, though, we have Jupiter behind the scenes in Cazimi, about to go through the heart of the sun, where it experiences a rebirth and enters its new sign at the same time as a solar eclipse, a double new moon solar eclipse in Aries at the 2 critical degrees, with the nodes of destiny, with that square to Pluto, and Uranus, Saturn, and Neptune assisting Mars in Cancer on its way to be opposite of Pluto during Pluto retrograde. Over the summer, when we have the nodes of destiny switching signs for their next 18-month cycle. I know, it's a lot of layers. And Venus retrograde opposite Pluto over the summer during Pluto retrograde. More on that later. Don't get scared. But we're not off the hook. Because that's a lot of intense energy, we're lucky that Mercury's in Taurus, where we can slow down. We can take a more grounded, practical, stable approach, practice patience and presence. We're not worried about the past. We're not worried about the future. Neither of those exist. We're focused on the here and now. It's the only power we have, right? That's Taurus. Presence. We're working hard, we're being consistent, we're probably not starting new things. We'll get into some do's and don'ts for Mercury retrograde if you stay with me. We're committed and loyal, but we take our time, making sure that what we're committing to is truly right for us and right for the other person or party. And it's thorough. Most importantly, it listens more than it speaks. Taurus, more than any other sign, knows that it has 2 ears and 1 mouth. It's resource-focused, specifically Mercury in Taurus. Resource-focused, security-focused, love and value-focused, and sustainability-focused. especially self-sustainability. So Taurus is ruled by Venus, which also rules Libra, which was the focus of our previous full moon on April 6th, and the focus of where our nodal axis will be shifting, the me versus we, Aries, Libra axis coming in July, which will be an 18-month transit. More on that later. Venus, we need to look at where Venus is. Venus is in Gemini, which happened on April 11th and will stay in Gemini until May 7th. Because Venus is in Gemini, which is one of the signs that Mercury rules, it's in mutual reception or partnership, working very closely with Mercury retrograde in Taurus. It means that the heart and mind are working very closely together. This means we'll have our heart and mind, Venus and Mercury, working together. We'll be very focused on the work that we do and whether that provides meaning and gives us a greater sense of purpose and worth, especially with Mars, our motivation and drive in Cancer answering to the moon, our emotional and intuitive nature that also has some ties to the work that we do to fill our cups, Venus. Retrograde will be very focused on what we love and value, especially as it relates to our relationships, be that with people or substances, our abundance, our wealth, our money, our resources, what we do for work to acquire said money, wealth, and abundance, how abundant we are overall, our ability to attract and receive abundance, what can we learn, how can we adapt. Gemini is a mutable sign. It's a mutable air sign, and Mercury is very adaptable, rules Gemini and Virgo, two mutable signs. So how can we be more flexible? What can we learn? Gemini, information, knowledge. How can we adapt? Mutable energy. What do we do when opportunities arise? Do we embrace them with an open heart, or do we let insecurity and fear block our ability to receive it? Venus in Gemini can bring beauty in communication, particularly writing, being in flow, being in harmony with nature and its elements. It can bring enhanced creativity, enhanced expression, and enhanced openness to be more receptive to not only other people but their perspectives and ideas, and increased curiosity and an increased desire to learn. Encouraged to handle setbacks with grace and remember that within each ending lies an equal seed of opportunity. Our words, be them thought or spoken or written, have the power to create a reality. So at the time of Mercury retrograde's beginning, we have 7 major placements in the sign of Taurus. That's a huge emphasis of energy there. I'm going to break it down bit by bit, but we'll start by backtracking just a little bit. What about Jupiter? Jupiter is not in Taurus, at least not yet, but it's still hovering nearby at 23 degrees of Aries, which is within conjunction of where this Mercury retrograde begins and returns to, most importantly, begins and ends. So it's behind the scenes. It also was eclipsed and involved in this new eclipse, so it's involved in teeing off the energy. It's going through its Cazimi, which is going through the heart of the sun. It's a cycle that happens every year, and it's like the phoenix rising. It's the death and rebirth of the planet. It goes through its next 1-year cycle, and it's on its way into Taurus, which it will enter Taurus at the end of the Mercury retrograde. So this is one of the major themes. At the beginning of April, we're backtracking a little bit to introduce the energy behind Jupiter in Aries and how that all ties into this. So Aries season is typically a very masculine, yang, pursuing or chasing energy. But this year, Mars has been in Cancer since the end of March, which rules Aries along with Scorpio. It's debilitated in Cancer, and it's been out of bounds. So it's been particularly weakened. It has trouble expressing its fiery nature. Mars rules our motivation and drive, and it shows what we focus our energy on. This means that our motivation and drive and focus have been directly tied to our emotional and intuitive nature and answering to the ever-changing moon. People who have their Mars and natal moon in conjunction in their chart can understand and relate to this energy, and I'm one of those individuals. It means that whatever you're doing, whatever work you're doing, Mars, energy put outward, pursuing goals, drive, and ambition, needs to be tied to your emotional and intuitive nature. It needs to be directly tied to filling your cup. It needs to have meaning on some deeper level for yourself. Moon in Aries individuals, or moon in the first house individuals, might also be able to relate to some of this. Since Mars, our motivation and drive, is answering to the ever-changing moon, watch out for sudden mood swings that could lead to reactivity and outbursts, especially involving anger or passive aggression. Cancer, we may be particularly focused and defensive regarding our families and homes. Specifics on Mars in Cancer, check out my video here. With the full moon in Libra at the beginning of April, April had us focused on reconciliation in relationship to others, and reconciliation with the self. With Chiron, our deepest soul wounds involving Jupiter in opposition to this full moon, bringing tests to our healing and our alignment, tests to our resources, security, stability, tests to our ability to attract. At least the way that we've been used to attracting things. Chasing. Many of us are waking up. Many of us are waking up to the illusion of hustle culture. Shortly thereafter, on April 11th, Jupiter and Sun, an exalted Sun in Aries, aligned at 21 degrees of Aries. Now remember, their ruler is still weakened under the influence of Cancer and the moon. This still allowed us, although we might not be abundantly aware of it right now, this alignment of Jupiter and the Sun at 21 degrees of Aries allowed us to realize our individual talents and light and how we can share that in a way with others that might be inspiring. Since these two planets are influenced by Mars, which is influenced by a more feminine yin receptive Cancer moon energy, we're shifting as well into that energy of attraction and abundance. Us into the energy of the new moon solar eclipse on April 20th, if you're on the East Coast like me. The moon, which shifted from optimistic Sagittarius into practical, hardworking, albeit emotionally detached Capricorn, where the moon is debilitated. If it's opposite its sign of rulership, it's debilitated or weakened, meaning it has trouble getting in touch with its emotions. We're having a standoff, me and the bee. It has trouble expressing its emotions. It has trouble accessing them in the first place to be able to then express them. One, do they exist? How do I access them? Two, how do I identify what they are in order to express them? That's a very Capricorn thing to learn to marry that connection and find that balance. Opposition, Cancer, where it's debilitated and weakened. This is opposite. This is also opposite Mars in Cancer at karmic number 13 degrees, putting pressure and tension on Mars, that deliverer of karma, our motivation and drive, which you can see wherever you have Aries in your chart. Since Mars is in charge of Jupiter right now, while Jupiter is in Aries, heading toward rebirth in Taurus, with that building an intensity at the culmination of this Mercury retrograde. Jupiter is still expanding and benefiting us behind the scenes. Keep that in mind. So at the time of the beginning of the Mercury retrograde, let's talk about the concentration of energies in Taurus. So we have the Sun, which between the 20th and 21st, the Sun moves from 0 to 1 degree of Taurus. We have the North Node at 4 degrees of Taurus, ruling our fated events and destiny. We have Mercury ruling our conscious minds at 15 degrees of Taurus, where it halts. Only 2 degrees away from where the moon moves very fast. The moon went from 29 degrees of Aries with the Sun the previous day on April 20th, ending Aries season and beginning Taurus with that new moon, to within a day, it's at 17 degrees of Taurus aligned with Uranus. So those are in conjunction with Mercury. They're within 2 degrees. It's close enough of a conjunction to be significant. And then Mercury, over the next few weeks, while it's in retrograde, is going to travel backward, revisit 5 degrees of Taurus, which is the point that was just before where our North Node is now. But all of these planets are in play. We have Vesta at 2 degrees, and we also have Juno, those are asteroids, at 23 degrees of Taurus. And those are challenging our long-term commitments and reconfiguring those commitments and what we commit to, what we value. So close to Vesta and the North Node, there seems to be a spotlight on fated events, especially at the beginning of Mercury retrograde. With Mercury and Uranus so close together, this is a pattern that includes breaking free of limiting paradigms, out-of-the-box thinking, like some tremendously innovative thought, downloads, understanding, awareness. It can be really destabilizing. So Uranus is the planet of change and revolution, and that with Mercury puts those two, and Uranus is actually the highest evolution of Mercury, so the two get along really well. They're kind of like cousins, or like one's the grandfather mentoring the other, like Rick and Morty. It can be really destabilizing for the ego. So the ego comes out as a means of defending the self, and it really resists change, and Uranus is change. Uranus like comes and throws lightning bolts. It comes and throws curveballs into your life, and it seems scary, and any Aquarius can tell you, like, yeah, it keeps you on your toes for one, but it's meant to shake you free of stagnation. It's meant to ensure that the work you're doing, what you're doing, is aligned with authenticity, and that you're living aligned with your value system and doing work that provides meaning aligned with your soul. Similarly, this is a collective wake-up call for us to ensure that the work we're doing has meaning and fulfills our soul, that we are presenting our authentic selves outward and inspiring others to do the same, holding one another with accountability, but also empathy and compassion. Not so much as to enable, but not turning a blind eye either. Being in mutual reception to Venus in Gemini, what we love and value seems to be craving a change, an adventure, liberation. Let's talk about the next couple days in more detail as we move into the beginning of May. Beginning with Thursday, April 20th, the alignment of the Sun and Moon in the early degrees of Taurus as the Moon moves onward, answering to Venus. Taurus is Venus ruled. The next day, with that new moon solar eclipse, kick-starting Mercury retrograde from April 21st to May 14th in Taurus, from 15 to 5 degrees. Mutual reception with Venus in Gemini until May 7th, so keep all of that in mind and we'll circle back to it. So the moon is still in Taurus, so our emotional intuitive nature and our sun, our soul's expression, are aligned in Taurus, focused on resources, what we love and value during the new moon and at the very beginning of Mercury retrograde. Then Saturday, as we begin Earth Day, I think that's beautiful as well, that we begin the day with so many placements in the Earth sign that's connected to Earth, the planet Earth, Mother Earth, and Gaia, Taurus. We have our moon in Taurus as well before it heads into chatty and sociable communication and knowledge-focused Gemini for Sunday and Monday. Tuesday and Wednesday, the moon's in Cancer with Mars there, so remember that effect of the moon and Mars together, also the Mars answering to Cancer and the moon. On Thursday, the 27th, we have our first quarter moon in Leo, putting some pressure and tension into our Leo life area that will be called to release under the next full moon, the lunar eclipse on May 5th. We've got Pluto retrograde starting that Sunday. I'll put a separate video about that because that's pretty in-depth and I'm a big fan of Pluto. Not scary, don't worry. We'll be transforming together with the moon in Mercury ruled Virgo. Then we have Thursday, that full moon lunar eclipse happening at 14 degrees of Scorpio, which will be involving an alignment of the moon and the south node, what we're collectively shedding and letting go of, with a lot of energy opposite that in Taurus. Stay tuned. Shortly thereafter, on May 7th, we have Venus leaving Gemini for Cancer, where it will join Mars in answering to the moon. It'll be following closely behind Mars and we'll catch up in the summer, shifting even more focus on what we love and value onto our home and value with Mars there, with Mars also there. Then we have our last quarter moon in Aquarius, and around that same time with that last quarter moon in Aquarius where Pluto is, we have Mercury going direct in Taurus, and then Jupiter finally completing its Cazimi and entering its rebirth, entering Taurus reactivating the energies of April 19th, 20th, 21st at the beginning of Mercury retrograde. We'll have something reactivating that at the exact end, from the 14th to the 16th of May. A really big focus on reflecting on what we love and value, especially as that ties to our relationships. It might involve our home and family in some capacity. Maybe some of us are going through loss. When there's a Pluto retrograde, that's a great time to turn inward. It's a very subtle energy, but with Pluto going through one of its tumultuous transition, it takes 2 years to move. So with it hovering between 29, the critical energetic degree of Capricorn, and 0 degrees of Aquarius, both involved in this retrograde, it's and square to what's going on. And I'll get into the aspects next for what's going on with this new moon in the beginning of Mercury retrograde. It's going to be more intense, so we'll talk about that soon as well. We'll be embracing personal transformation, and remember that the answers lie in the deepest crevices of your psyche. Don't be surprised if some relationships have to end. Remember, things that aren't aligned with where you're headed, they need to fall away to make room for what is aligned, which brings me back to Mercury retrograde in Taurus. So since it's a retrograde, it's a really good time to clear house. Let's talk about first, before we get into the aspects involved, let's talk about the do's and don'ts for Mercury retrograde. So for the do's for Mercury retrograde, whenever Mercury's in retrograde, I consider it meditative silence. So you can apply that however you would like. You can actually practice silence if that speaks to you, or you can apply it in whatever means that allows you to still function the needs you need to. So maybe that means taking a social media break, maybe that means taking a break from technology, maybe it means taking a break from the cell phone specifically, or maybe it's a conscious effort to double read your emails, double check them before hitting send, double checking your posts before hitting publish or post. Maybe it's something like that, but it is an opportunity to turn inward, to reflect. With it happening in conjunction to Uranus, this is bringing some mental clarity and some gifts with it. So as you're turning inward and reflecting, maybe carry a journal with you, because you never know when that innovative download might come in. And you want to make sure you have a piece of paper handy so you don't lose the idea. You can also use the notes in your phone feature as well. I use that one quite a lot. It's an opportunity to listen more than we speak and to remember that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use it as a time to journal and reflect, to meditate. And if you're not into sitting and formally meditating, there are so many ways that you can meditate in daily life. You can meditate through gardening, where you take a garden bed and you see it's weeded and messy, and by the end of an hour or however long you decide, whether it's 5 minutes, to dedicate, just like the things that are weighing on your mind, as you pluck them one by one, you can see your work paying off right before your eyes, and it's instantly gratifying. Other things that are meditative, washing the dishes, really concentrating on the elements, concentrating on the sound, the feeling, the smell, using a fragrant soap, something that is gentle in your hands, anything to enhance the sensory experience. That's all very Taurus. You can practice meditative movement, which I have that Mars and Moon conjunction in my chart, so that means and it's in Gemini, so I've got tons of energy. So I like to work out and go to the gym, but I also like to do meditative forms of exercise. When I lift, I match my inhalations and my exhalations. I pair them with the easiest and hardest parts of the movement. That's something I learned in yoga and Pilates. I practice yoga, I practice Pilates, anything to connect my mind, my breath, and my body. You can practice Tai Chi, Qigong. Any of those would be really great ways to practice movement and meditation. You may want to do something for self-care. You may be inspired to start a new diet. Just remember, go easy. Take on what you can realistically do and manage. Nothing new during Mercury retrograde. Back up your data, update your passwords. If you travel, don't be afraid to travel. If you travel for business, maybe take a break, because that might be stressful. But if you're traveling for pleasure, it might be a great time to get away. If you do travel, just plan accordingly. Double check your reservations. Leave early. Anticipate delays and interruptions. They're inevitable. I have Mars in the 9th house, which means that some of my karma is delivered while I travel, and you can ask my boyfriend and his mother what they think of that, but Brian hasn't had an on-time departure home since we started dating. Sorry, Brian. Delays are a way of life with Mars in the 9th house. It's a great time to clean house. Remember what I said about clearing out the old to make way for the new? Don't cling on to the old. Set it free. Invite what's meant for you inside. Most importantly, protect your energy. A lot of people around you, and depending on how sensitive you are, a lot of people around you will be really stressed out. They might be reacting. A lot of people are unconscious, so they will be blind to this energy and they'll be letting it consume them. They won't be working, likely, they won't be conscious like you are working or learning to work with the energy. So they'll be running around stressed out. They might be lashing out. They might be taking out their frustration on a customer service person. Just remember to protect your energy. You don't have to absorb that. You may want to meditate more often. You may want to wear some sort of protection or something if you're particularly energetically sensitive. Remember to rest and practice self-care. Embody that Taurus and Earth energy. Practical, strictly adhere to budgets and limits. The don'ts of Mercury retrograde. Don't sign any new contracts or agreements, especially on something you're not 100% sure of. Don't rush, speed, or drive while distracted or under the influence. Remember the close relationship here between Venus and Gemini. Venus and Gemini has shiny object syndrome. That's from Haley's comment. Shiny object syndrome. It gets very distracted by shiny, new, interesting things. It's so curious and adaptable. Be careful of that with Mercury retrograde and mutual reception. Be careful. Take the energy of Taurus. Go slow. Be cautious. Think about what could happen before it happens rather than the Gemini or Aries way of thinking about it. Well, oops, too late. And don't make any major decisions, especially life-changing ones, until May 14th. It's not that long. If you make any major purchases, make sure you keep receipts. It's advised that you not make major purchases, but it's not as bad as Venus retrograde. Venus retrograde we have coming up this summer, so keep that in mind, all of these things affecting our finance house, and then we have all summer, all of Leo season, we have Venus retrograde through Leo, opposite Pluto, so that'll be affecting our money and our love and value as well. So maybe we'll see what it's like between Mercury retrograde and Venus retrograde, but we also have that Pluto retrograde coming. So just keep your receipts in general. We don't know what this economy is going to bring. Venus affects more of the home as well, and Venus will be more tied to the Venus-ruled people, the Librans, the Taurans, whereas Mercury retrograde has a strong influence on the Mercury-ruled individuals, the Geminis and the Virgos. All right, now for the aspects. Mercury retrograde is working with, so it's in sextile or 60-degree angle to both Mars in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. So it's working with our motivation and drive, which is answering to the moon, more receptive and attracting and influencing Jupiter. Also working with Saturn, our karmic lessons. Remember, Mars is one of the two deliverers of karma, which is answering to Neptune and Pisces and has a lot to do with Piscean and Neptunian themes of delusion, manipulation, victim playing. It also involves spirituality and addiction. Seems to be a really big theme with these two, Saturn and Neptune, both in Pisces at the same time. Both of those working with this Mercury retrograde is bringing the Mars in Cancer is bringing hard work and deliberation and focus, while Saturn and Neptune are bringing longevity and healing. So we're applying that in a daily and consistent way so that we can lead to actual healing. This is happening in a challenging position to Pluto, which is forming a square to the nodal axis of destiny, putting pressure. Square is similar to an opposition. It puts pressure and forces change. It forces an integration. We also have that building, like we mentioned before. We have Mars building toward that opposition to Pluto, those two deliverers of karma, coming up over the summer, which will bring even more tension while Pluto is retrograding. Still with me? Let me know, comment below. If you're still with me, there are 3 planetary transits involved with financial crisis, and we have all 3 of them happening at the same time. Eclipses, which bring permanent change and are really intense. Uranus in Taurus. Uranus, the planet of sudden change and revolution. Sudden events in our money, banking, Taurus, and Pluto switching signs, especially an Earth sign. In this case, Pluto's in the process of switching from Capricorn to Aquarius.
And now for your Mercury Retrograde themed journal prompts. How do my salary, style, wardrobe, communications, and daily life reflect my inner self-worth? Where have I sold myself short, under-earned, or otherwise compromised my own value? Where have I avoided reality and allowed myself to slide into self-aggrandizement, spending beyond my means? Thanks again for watching. Be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell to stay in the loop for the latest transits.